Since 2013, when I started this channel, I have published a lot of videos about UFOs. In my comments from these videos, viewers, subscribers like yourself, have shared their personal experiences. In this video, I've compiled their experiences that were shared with me from Wurtsmith Air Force Base at Oscoda, Michigan. And I think you'll find this compilation as interesting as I did. At least I hope you will. In the time frame of these cases, Wurtsmith was not the only Strategic Air Command base whose airspace was being violated by these UFO/UAP intruders. In fact, for a while it was like an epidemic. Now, following are some of the shared reports from your fellow subscribers. Please feel free to share your comments with me and with the rest of the Dennis Morrison Charlie Cat Presents family. Okay. The first encounter came to me just a few days ago, and like all these, they were left on for my video, UFOs Buzz Wurtsmith Air Force Base. So if you've not watched that video, I'd suggest you take a look at it. It's kind of interesting, I believe. Now, as I said, the first account was submitted by YouTuber Quantum FX, and he wrote, "I remember this at this base, and the base has been visited a few times over the past years, even after the base was shut down. I was almost 20 feet away from a floating triangle. The object was tilted and moving slowly, just drifting upward, and the object was by the end of the flight line, going over the fence and across the road behind the base, Ray Road. I saw the entire object close up. It was during a lightning storm, and the lightning lit up the sky and allowed me a few seconds to look at the object. What happened next is the entire road and the end of the base lit up like lightning, but it stayed on for about 30 seconds. What on earth had that much power to light the entire area like that, and for so long? Like daylight. So I sped up the car to get to the end of Ray Road, and I was going to get out of my car at that point. But as soon as I got to the end, the light disappeared. There had to be more than one object. I couldn't explain. Anyways, end quote, as Brandon would say." So the area written about, though, Ray Road behind the base, is an eerie, very eerie place at night, even without UFOs in the picture. And I've raced down that road many times a late night to feel relieved to turn off onto F41 and leave it behind me. And to me, Ray Road is one of those places that has a sort of disturbed atmosphere about it, and I don't know why that would be, but it has that feeling, to me anyways. And like I said, I've been on it a lot of times at night by myself, and it was eerie. Now, this next account is from subscriber Yoshi Toshi 101, and I quote Yoshi Toshi 101. "Wow, I was stationed at Wurtsmith Air Force Base from May 1974 to June 1976, and I worked on second shift, so I was off duty during the day. I remember looking out of the barracks window and seeing what appeared to be an oval-shaped object hovering over the end of the runway. So they moved up and down, side to side, and then they flew off. Now, I was stunned, not believing my own eyes, and never mentioned it to anyone. And I observed these in the daylight." End quote. The oval is a classic shape for UFOs. In fact, my own 1966 sighting event was. The next account was sent in by I Work Alone, and it features another oval-shaped UFO or UAP object. So once again, I quote from the subscriber. "I was stationed at Wurtsmith Air Force Base from 1986 to 1990. I think it was 1989. I left the barracks to go to the mini BX to grab some Gatorade. And it was late afternoon. As I was driving, I looked up a bit above the tree line, and I saw a UFO. It had the shape of an elongated dog's dish, or somewhat oval. It had pastel lights indicating a rotation motion, and I pulled over and was staring at it, and I'll never forget. A colonel and his wife were staring at me as they were driving by the opposite direction. I watched as it hovered and then traveled away in the opposite direction almost instantaneously. I turned around and went straight back to my dorm and told my roommate, and he told me to call the control tower, which I did. There was no answer. He said that's not possible as it remained staffed and on duty 24/7. But I didn't call back, and I didn't tell any of my superiors, end quote. So there was some fear on his part about letting his superiors know what he had seen. And you have to remember, back in the 1970s, people were, by and large, were still considered crackpots who saw these kinds of things. So it's an interesting case, and I'm left wondering if the guys from the control tower might have been out investigating the UFO incursion that was taking place right at that moment. And there had to be a pretty good reason that they were not picking up the phone. So what were people seeing in the skies around Wurtsmith Air Force Base and other northern tier SAC bases? I doubt that our government will ever give meaningful disclosure ever. But some of the objects were immense in size and they could have perhaps been what is called motherships. It's 2022. I guess we need to call them birthing ships. Right? Some bad joke. Sometimes it seems like our reality is indeed a bad joke. Let's move on to the next case. Now on to the next case. Subscriber Pamela Mahar, M-A-H-E-R, submitted the following, and I quote, "I saw them. I was 13 years old and I saw them from Fowler Road, which is around 16 miles north of F-41 from the front gate of the base. They were huge. From where I was standing, red fireball shaped, and they stretched out flatter as they took off." And I found that interesting, that it's almost like a Star Trek type thing when you see the Enterprise or one of them go to warp speed. It reminded me of that. But anyways, they flattened out as they took off. And then she wrote, "I remember them hovering, and when they moved it was straight up and down, unlike any other craft that I know of. They were so fast from one point to another in an instant and then just stop," end quote. And that's one of the things that always amazes me when I watch videos of UFOs, is how the instantaneous stop. Anything from our world, I believe, that would probably kill, maybe not a tardigrade, but anything else it would probably kill. So Miss Mahar's description of the object flattening out when it took off at high speed could cause a lot of speculation. If these objects can control space in such a manner, then the technology they have is truly astounding. And remember, too, she was about 16 miles away and describes them as looking huge from that distance. Now, some time ago I received an interesting account from Gary Rawlinson. Now, while Mr. Rawlinson did not personally see one of the UFOs, he has some interesting observations on what the people of Oscoda and Wurtsmith were feeling about all this high strangeness that was going on. And he wrote, "I was working as an aircraft fuel systems technician at the time. I did not see anything, but it was the talk of the town, and it was. Everybody seemed to know about it, and though some information says it was a helicopter, that is not what's being described by the troops. The alert pad had B-52 bombers with nuclear weapons mounted and ready for war at any time, just sitting there waiting and ready. What is disturbing is that these were seen for weeks hovering over the areas where these weapons and planes sat, and there was nothing that anybody could do about it. We were helpless to do anything to stop whatever these objects were doing in Oscoda and at the other northern tier SAC bases. We were powerless." And then he goes on, "I only learned recently that the base sent an aircraft to try to identify one of the two that were seen. Oscoda is and was a small town, and most of us were either military or civilian supporting the military. These events were talked about for a long time because our base was defenseless to stop the incursions and defend the security of our nuclear weapons." And indeed, that is one of the frightening thing about those sightings that took place in the late 70s, early 80s. There is you must Google, or put in the search engine here, Northern Tier Strategic Air Command UFO sightings, and you'll find sightings from other places than two, besides just Oscoda and Wurtsmith, and they are fascinating, absolutely fascinating. and a little bit frightening too. Now the powers that were at play passed off what civilian and personnel were saying as a helicopter. None of these accounts or ones published elsewhere sound anything like a helicopter. Not like it at all. And I think it was just a really stupid attempt at covering up, just like calling the craft that crashed at Roswell a weather balloon. I don't believe it. Anyways, then another viewer, Ginger Legs, shared the following account. She told the year was 1975. Late one night after work, and I was sitting at the end of Wurtsmith Air Force Base runway by the strobe lights, sitting there and relaxing with a friend of mine. We looked north above the base and we saw a red light in the sky, nothing moving. As we sat there in silence, we watched the UFO now move directly west at an incredible speed. And so it was not a plane or a helicopter. And at the same elevation, still watching it as it stopped for about 5 seconds. Now it then moved direct east at the same incredible speed and stopped. We both sat in silence and in awe. It went back north at a higher elevation and stopped again. It stayed in that position for about 20 seconds. Then it went up and out of sight in less than a second. End of the account. This is one of the things, again, that's most mysterious to me, is how they can go from stationary to bam, straight up and out and gone in a heartbeat. The speed is phenomenal. Now this last one has an interesting element to it. The UFO in this account is also a USO, or an unidentified submerged object, as it dives into Van Etten Lake. This account was sent to me by a subscriber. I love this guy's name for his channel. Crazy Papa from up north. Cute. Well, Crazy Papa wrote the following. When I was 5 years old, we lived across the lake from the base, Wurtsmith Air Force Base. And my cousins lived next door, and we were outside playing kickball when their mom yelled for them to come in for dinner. Well, I stayed outside waiting for them and bounced around the red rubber ball when all of a sudden I felt a heaviness and pressure coming down. I remember also that the ball didn't bounce back up. It was as if something was holding it down. So I felt like I was supposed to look up in the sky, he wrote, and there I saw a cylindrical shaped object, a bit smaller than the jets I was used to seeing. Now there was a metal on metal sound, but deep. Only thing I can think of that reminds me of the sound was hearing my kid listening to some bass music called dubstep. Okay. The cylinder had a haziness around it at the center, and staying in the position, both ends of the cylindrical object rotated but in separate directions. Interesting. I remember even then the leaves were forced down to the road as it was windy, and it was a windy fall evening, and they were rustling and moving across the street with the breeze, but not when the UFO was present. It was as if they were held down also by some force. He continued, I will always remember how that they went towards the lake side of our house. So I ran following it across the road, and it moved very fast. It went into the lake very slowly, as there were no waves or water disturbances as it submerged. I ran in the house to tell everybody about it, but they shrugged me off, which is the end of his story there. And a lot of people got shrugged off or brushed under the carpet back then when they saw a strange and mysterious phenomenon in the sky. And yet it was there. Yet we're finding out more and more all the time that the military was interested in it and still investigating it. Just weren't talking about it to us dim-witted civilians, I guess. Let's see, if there were entities coming here from other planets, I believe that we would be adult enough to accept that. Well, some of us would be. I think of the liberals and I think, oh wow, no way, I would want them to think they were representative of normal human society, because they certainly are not. So my friends, keep your eyes skyward, as you never know what might be up there right over your head right now watching you. And God bless you all, my dear friends, and a special thanks to all those who send in these accounts. And again, I ask, if you have accounts to send in and share with everybody, please do so. I would love to hear you. Charlie Cat would love to hear you. And I'm sure everybody else that are subscribers would love to hear you. God bless. Talk to y'all real soon. I'm off mentally.